let's see. We already talked about the cinematic universe, Duncan Egg. We talked about Blood Moon. Oh, there's this weird story of how Ryan Condal got the job. He essentially was doing some filming in Santa Fe in 2013, and he cold called George R. R. Martin and asked him if he wanted to have dinner. And George R. R. Martin said yes, and they had dinner. And then 5 fucking years later, when this show is going forward, George R. R. Martin like calls him up and is like, "Hey, do you want to be showrunner?" And I was like, "What the fuck?" Like such a weird random story. Like
I'm sure there's more to it that they're not gonna
sure, sure.
put.
I imagine there is like maybe they had like a short list or like there's different people like there's agents and stuff pulling the strings and there's people in different circles and stuff. But apparently he like had dinner with George and like proved that he was a super fan or something and that like impressed him or something. I also thought it was very funny is that they were talking about season 8 a bunch. And they said that somebody's like, oh, season 8 was so divisive. And I was like, there was nothing divisive about season 8. Season 8 unified people more than anything else in the world.
That is true.
But yeah, they mentioned that House of the Dragon is going to be more like The Crown, 2 sets of actors. I do think it's funny that the actress that plays young Rhaenyra and the actor that plays older Rhaenyra are only 8 years apart.
Oh,
Yeah. So I think that's
funny that you mentioned The Crown. For some reason, YouTube loves to throw random clips of random shows at me, and a couple weeks ago was The Crown. Matt Smith's in it. Edmure Tully's in it. I forgot the actor's name. Forgive me. Charles Dance, who plays Tywin, he's in it. John Lithgow from Third Rock from the Sun, he's in it too. Randomly, I think he plays Churchill. I love John Lithgow. He's great.
Oh, really?
But
Even though he's an American?
yeah,
Oh.
he's in there. Like he's fucking phenomenal. I have to say though, one thing about the article that did stick out at me is that I might get my wish because you know me, I love anthology series. The audience, if they're not sick of it hearing already, you're gonna hear it again. I love anthologies; it's my jam. This one piece from the article stood out to me. I took a screen cap of it. Sources say that the show's Civil War arc might be shorter than you might expect. While nothing is carved in stone, the current Targaryen storyline is currently plotted to run only about 3 to 4 seasons, which I currently think 3 would be the max, and that would be pushing it a little bit. But but even that might not mark the end of the show. Dragon could,
Hot
in
D.
theory,
Hot D.
Hot D, could in theory leap decades forward in time or backwards to chronicle other major events in Targaryen dynasty with an entirely new cast, such as exploring Aegon's conquest or the Doom of Valyria. You are fucking stupid if you guys do this. Do not do that. If you're going to go forward in time, you could do the Blackfire Rebellion, sure. And then maybe Robert's Rebellion, sure.
This is like, it's so cart before the horse. It's like being on a first date with someone and like having them talk about like what like school you're gonna put your 4th child in. Like it's just like you are so fucking cart before the horse here. Like this whole like after 4 seasons, like first of all, 4 seasons is like 6 or 7 years in the future, right?
I don't know if they're gonna do what Game of Thrones did, where they put out 1 season a year, because I think if they were smart, they would maybe like take a year off.
Right, I was saying like a year and a half between seasons was my guess, So, but yeah, it's just wait, yeah, no, and it's kind of that's the weird thing is when so often when I read the article, I thought how people just weren't in line with what the viewers or the world was thinking at the time, like. Be talking like we know. So they bring up season 8, and George is really angry about the toxic internet's like reaction to season 8, and he says, "Oh, I don't trust it. It was bad attitude." And somebody else said it was like a fake like online backlash, and both of them like they're not understanding that there is real legitimate reasons that season 8 was hated and that they need to learn from these lessons and to know that there is real fan apprehension about the upcoming show. I'm not saying that a lot of people are going to tune in, sure, but there's a lot, like when I talk to casuals, There's a lot of fan apprehension, like, oh God, like really? Oh. Like and to James Hibbard's question, to James Hibbard's credit, even he who is like he's created this huge puff piece, even he is like, yeah, no, like the online hate is kind of real. Like he like writes a paragraph after all of them, and to be like, to be fair, you can find criticism of season 8 pretty readily. Like even even the biggest sycophant, like writes in his article, like, no, like there's legitimate season 8 hatred out there.
I find it funny that people like, because my comment section is filled with this, and I know for a fact yours is as well. People saying, nah, I'll pass. Then why the fuck are you here? Yeah, like, why are you like still like you'll pass.
I guarantee that a lot of people are going to check out the premiere, the first episode.
Oh, of course they are. These motherfuckers love to complain.
Now,
they're gonna be
will they continue on? I don't know. But I know that a lot of people are going to check out that first episode. Just out of sheer curiosity. Even if you hated Game of Thrones, you're going to check out that first episode.
They better come like guns blazing for that like first, because you're right. You mentioned earlier how in the first season of Game of Thrones, the first episode, Bran falls out the window and you're like, oh my God, what just happened?
Yeah.
They need to do something just as good, if not better, in that first episode to keep you coming back.
That pilot is so well done in that you've got that opening, that cold opening, where, you know, you're like that cold opening where they start and they're going through the wall and you're like, what the fuck is that? Like the first thing you're like, what the hell is that? And then they find zombies. Like you're hooked after that. And you're like, oh my God, let's get back to those zombies. Of course they never fucking come, but like, you know, but you're then you get into this whole like story of different stuff. And then you get the falling from the window that gets people wanting to get the next episode. So just on the fact that they mastered that beginning, that opening, and that ending was perfect. But I mean, I guess they had 2 shots at it, right?
Yeah, that is true. They actually won't show anybody. It's mentioned in the article that the original pilot is locked away in a vault, and even the Blood Moon pilot is also locked away in this like HBO vault, to the point where they won't even let George R.R. Martin see it.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I know George R.R. Martin has seen the first pilot, but
oh, has he?
Yeah, I know, but I don't. This article says that he hasn't seen Blood Moon, which is surprising. I mean,
something I found very interesting, by the way, in the article is this one line here that I wanted to highlight. When HBO ordered House of the Dragon in October of 2019, Benioff and Weiss, by then at Netflix with a massive overall deal, emailed Condal and Sapochnik congratulations and best wishes, but otherwise stuck to their decision to move on. That line right there is weird, right? So Dave and Dan emailed the new showrunners to congratulate them and give them best wishes, but otherwise stuck to their decision to move on.
Like they had a choice? Like
they had a choice. Who asked you guys to come back?
Yeah. Was there some sort of, you know, consultant kind of thing offered? Yeah.
I have no idea. And by the way, to what you were saying earlier about a lot of Fire and Blood, you know, we're going to have a lot of scenes that you could call filler. In my House of the Dragon trailer breakdown video, I outlined this as well. There are a lot of scenes in earlier Game of Thrones that Dave and Dan were in charge of that are fucking phenomenal. They're not even in the books.
Yeah.
I always love the Robert Cersei scene. In season 2, Arya Tywin was phenomenal. You love Theon and Maester Luwin. Season 3, we had Chaos is a Ladder. All these are original show-only things, and they knocked it out of the park. So hopefully, Condal and Spochnik guy, they bring their A game. But I will say this though, the reason I'm a little like hesitant is I just wish they had Brian Cogman with them. Because Brian Cogman's the guy.
Absolutely. Like I do feel like they've pulled in their action director. Like Sapachek is like, he's the fan favorite for all of the big action scenes, but
he did Battle of the Bastards.
Right. And Hard Home and stuff like that. But having a bunch of action scenes, a good show does not make. You know, season 8 and season 7 had plenty of big action scenes. And, you know, it's not like people, you know, are gonna you know, accept that stuff. That's the frosting, but you need the fucking cake, you know? You need something You need something real.
I think they realize that, and that's why a lot of this puff piece is also puffing up Ryan Condal. Because one thing here, Martin selecting Condal ended up further demonstrating the author's acumen. Condal's take on the Targaryen war idea, now given the punchy title House of the Dragon, was considered the strongest Thrones prequel script yet, besting efforts by more experienced writers. So this is really also an effort to, put some confidence into the fans that Ryan Condal is the guy. He's the guy you want holding this.
Yeah, claiming that he's a true fan, and then having George R. Martin like super attached to the project. Like, no, he's here consulting. It's gonna be good. Yeah, but I don't know. I don't think like it's not that George R. Martin has not created crap. Like, have you, he's. Have you guys watched Beauty and the Beast? Because you can go do that. And
there's this vampire story. I just ruined it by calling it a vampire story because you don't really know it's a vampire story until like the last couple of pages.
Oh.
But there's this story about intergalactic war coming to Earth that George was attached to, and it's such a ridiculous premise. I'll go into it like in another video, but it's such a ridiculous story that I'm like, what the fuck is this? What the fuck is this? This is stupid.
Yeah.
But no, he's attached to that. So you're right.
Yeah, I mean, what's great about George R. R. Martin is that he was a risk taker, and so he does some really crazy stuff. So he's got some great stories, and he's got some crazy bad stories, like comically bad stories. It's phenomenal. So for this idea, like ensuring everybody that, oh no, this is like a hand-picked George R. R. Martin guy who's like super big fan of the books, and George R. R. Martin's like right there making sure everything is going to be great. Like, I think that's all meaningless. Like, I think that the show, look, if you got good writers and the show comes together, the show comes together. We haven't seen it yet. The trailer makes it look pretty good. It's got some great actors, like, so we shall see. But I'll be open-minded about it. But to put all these different things forward, to be like, oh, these things are hinting to you that it's going to be great. No, none of these things hint to me that it's going to be great. The proof is in the pudding, and we'll see when we see the show.
Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah, the only other thing they talked about in the article was they did have a large mention of like the political climate changing.
What do you mean?
They spent a lot of the article talking about how, like, when Game of Thrones premiered in 2011, there was a different political climate than today.
Well, Twitter wasn't like the monster horrific thing it is now.
Yeah, but they were specifically talking about the overturning of Roe v. Wade, and like the presence of women in the story, and the presence of like birthings and reproductive rights and things like this. Of course, this was all filmed before. Much of it was filmed before the overturn of Roe v. Wade. So they kind of brought all this up. Yeah, I'll see. Well, we'll see if it's interesting and relevant. But it was that was a big part of the article as well. That's because Ice and Fire is political. Like obviously,
everything in the history of time and space that we've ever enjoyed, even as kids, has been political.
I know, it's a funny thing because there's so many people that are like, oh man, I just wish things wouldn't be so political. And you're like, do you think when you were watching Top Gun, like in the 80s, that wasn't political? Like the U.S. government like paid money for that movie to come out. Do you think there's no political aspect to that? Or Red Dawn? Do you think there's nothing political to Predator or Alien? Like all of these things are massively political. Like even Goonies, like this story about the bank like trying to take people's like lands and things like that. Like all of these things are political. And so
I will say the one time I hope I wish political stuff wasn't in something is during a certain timed how do I explain this? Like, for example, I'm a big fan of Halo, the video game Halo, and Adam Sessler was doing a Halo Infinite review, and I wanted to should I play the game? Should I buy it? Like, what should I do? And so I watched his review, and throughout his review, he's mentioning Joe Manchin.
Huh.
Why? why the fuck are you mentioning Joe Manchin? Because some reviews, like, people come back to from, like, years ahead to just, check out what the opinion was at the time, and, like, who the fuck is going to remember Joe Manchin? Like, who cares about Joe Manchin way into the future? Why are you bringing,
Yeah.
like this politician specifically, like, up? Like, I understand if it was like Bob Dole. I watched some old episodes of The Simpsons where they mentioned Bob Dole and Bill Clinton, and like that whole thing.
Yeah, and you've
Okay,
completely
that's
forgotten who Bob Dole is.
right. But Bob Dole was a fairly important figure, like
Yeah.
Stalin and whoever the fuck.
Sure,
But, like,
he
Joe Manchin,
he ran
who
for
the
president. He was a big power in the Senate. Yeah.
right, but who the fuck is Joe? Like, who cares about Joe Manchin, and why are you bringing Joe Manchin in a space sci-fi alien shooter? Like, why does
Yeah.
that matter? Like, that's where I agree. Like, leave it out of there. But like,
Right, but
when
you could also look at it another way and say, like, yeah, I mean, to make something very specific, I think in general, you want your stories to be kind of timeless. Like, even when
Yes.
you watch shows and they're pulling out their cell phones and they don't look right, you're kind of like taken out of the story, and so you kind of want to write a story where people just don't have phones, because then it can happen in any period. So you don't want stuff to feel stale. But it's almost the impossibility of removing politics from stuff. Like, when you think, like, okay, when they sold the Nintendo Entertainment System, it came with a light gun, and it came with Duck Hunt.
right,
And so you could say, like, from the beginning, like, the Nintendo Entertainment System is normalizing, like, handguns and hunting and, like, the experience of using guns, right? And some person might say, oh, they didn't think about that. Maybe they didn't, but, like, you can't divorce the politics of it, that you're throwing guns, whether a fake, digital gun that you're shooting at a screen, in a kid's hand, and making it normal for him to be shooting, and who didn't get angry in Duck Hunt and try to shoot the dog, and, like, what does that say about, like, and what does that say about, like, people's self-control with guns, but you can't do it. Something as simple as the first NES, the supposed pure time, was filled with politics, Did you want to talk about, I guess in the last thing, I guess the only thing left on here to talk about is the animated shows. They seem to be going forward, and the Sea Snake seems to be going forward, but and there was an obligatory Winds of Winter reference, which, yeah, it's just not happening.